Hello friends, and welcome to Gardening with Creekside. What do southern gardeners do when the heat hits? Well, first of all, we put on linen, and then next we head to the shade garden. Yes, the heat has arrived here in North Carolina, a zone 8A, and so Miss Brenna and I are going to spend some time here in the shade garden because y'all, just coming over here to the pines in this beautiful bed that my mama has curated, it instantly is 10 to 15 degrees cooler. The lush, cool tones of the garden make it feel even better. And so we are going to spend some time here because foliage and color and texture in a shade garden, that is king. It just creates such a peaceful, restful place for us gardeners to come to get a little bit of respite during the summer heat. And so what we're going to do today, because like I said, my mama has curated this beautiful shade garden here at the nursery in the Pines. We have talked, so I have permission to plant in this garden, but we're going to add a couple of perennials that are going to bring us different colors and textures. Yes, some flowers to this space, and then we're going to have a fun time creating a very unique container with some mini hostas. This is a dry shade garden. It is not on irrigation. Clearly, we have got tons of pine trees, hence the name of the space, the Pines. And so all of these plants that we're adding today, along with what Mama has already put into the garden, are going to be drought tolerant once established and long-lived perennials. So if you have a dry shade garden that you need some help and maybe you want to get some ideas on layering and texturing the garden, then this video is going to be absolutely perfect for you. I do have my trusty companion right here. She is panting, so I am sure that you will hear her being my little sidekick today. So without further ado, let's take a quick little tour of this space so you can get an idea, and then we're going to get to planting. When you come to the nursery, the bed that we're working in is just going to be off to your left. We've looked at this space a little bit before, but my mama really has taken over this bed, which I am more than happy for her to do because this is how she gardens every day in her garden. Underneath big mature pine trees with no irrigation, beautiful hostas, aspidistra, carexes, pulmonaria, plants that thrive in those woodland dry shade gardens. And you can see what a magnificent job she has done as far as layering the different colors and textures, movement in the garden with the aspidistra. It's like it's waving to us and saying hello. Because us gardeners, we don't quit, right? Just because it may get a little warm and toasty does not mean that we are going to stop gardening. And so that is why we are shifting our focus today to this beautiful shade garden and just adding in all of some more colors and textures, movement to the garden. Mama has done a beautiful job, and we do have a lovely collection of hostas in here, just so that way we can show our customers what they look like in the landscape. She has also gotten some epimedium in here because we really want to focus on those perennials that will handle the drought conditions and the woodland conditions underneath, competing with these big, huge, mature pine trees. Planting underneath trees, it doesn't matter what kind of trees they are, you're going to work against the roots of the trees, right? So you've got competition. The plants have competition for mostly the water and then of course the nutrition. So that's why it's being smart to know what kind of plants we want to put under here. Now, I will have to put a little asterisk by saying that this is a dry shade garden. It is not on irrigation. However, just like with any other garden, if it doesn't rain, then you're going to have to water it. So Mama comes down about once a week and is giving everybody a good deep watering. That is key to keeping the lushness and the beauty of the plants because they're not waterproof, right? I mean, as far as that, they got to still have some water. Otherwise, they're really going to struggle. So if you don't have irrigation, then yes, you're going to have to supplement with that water if it is not raining. I feel like sometimes I have to say that because when I will say that plants are drought tolerant and there's no irrigation, people think, oh, you don't have to water at all. You do, you're just gonna have to hand water it every once in a while. So that is why it's so important to choose the plants that are drought tolerant once established. And that is what we're going to do today. The three perennials that we are adding to the landscape today. First of all, this is Hurricane Ridge. It is a Jacob's Ladder. Y'all, I've got 5 of them here. This is a Creekside champion, and I have been so in love with this plant at the chicken coop garden, which is essentially the same conditions, dry shade. However, mine is in a container. These we are going to add to the landscape. Beautiful little blue purple flowers on them, very delicate. Y'all, this is a tough beast. I will tell you more about it later, but Hurricane Ridge, got 5 of them. We're gonna figure it out. Love different kind of texture with this, completely different than my hostas. Then we've got the mini hostas we're going to add to a container with a Georgia peach Heuchera. Then we have got a Brunnera. We have no Brunnera in here, and this is Alexandria. You will notice with Alexandria that she is so incredibly silver. It's going to be really fun, different color to this space, even though she has the shape of a lot of the hostas with her leaf shape. The color is completely different. Going to get nice and big and be beautiful. And last but certainly not least, we have Trevi Fountain Pulmonaria. Pulmonaria is wonderful in the dry shade. And then you get the fun speckles, right? And we're going to get flowers. So even though I am under the shade, I am starting to glisten. 'Tis the season, my friends. We're going to be glistening for months on end now. So what we're going to do is, of course, I have all of my supplies. I am going to decide where these plants are going to go. And as I plant them, I'm going to tell you why these are such great plants for a dry shade garden, because maybe they would be a good fit for your space. An iced coffee never hurts when you're working in the shade on a hot day. Thank you, Megan. I've got all of the perennials placed where I want to have them in the bed. With the Trevi Fountain Pulmonaria, we are going to keep them as one cluster. Essentially, I have put them in a triangle shape and they're going to go in. So planting with dry shade, there's a couple of little tricks. Obviously, we're competing with some tree roots. So I'm going to use the Jenny's Edition heavy duty auger. This is the 5-inch because everything is going to be a quart size that I am planting today. The heavy duty Jenny's Edition 5-inch is going to cut through the dry red clay and any roots that I come into contact with. Of course, before we're going to drill our hole, we are going to pull back the pine needles because we want to keep things nice and neat. Drill the hole, put in a little bit of biotone. We're going to go ahead and put those babies back in that hole, just in that native soil with the Biotone Starter Plus fertilizer. Then we're going to give everybody a little top dress of the Land and Sea compost. This is a great way to amend where you're planting. We're just going to amend that specific plant because Mimi has gone through here and everybody else has been amended, either when they were planted, if they were planted recently, or she did everybody in the late winter into the early spring. Then we will put our pine needles back, and then everybody will get a good drink of water at the end. Once everybody is in the ground, then we're going to go through and show you the whole design. But first, with Trevi fountain. So why would you may want to add Trevi fountain to your garden? Well, like I said, it is going to be a shade perennial. Well, shade in the south, shall I say. It is hardy in zones 4 to 9. So if you're in zone 4, then you absolutely could probably put this in full sun. If you're in zones 7, 8, 9, you're going to want to have filtered sun, morning sun, afternoon shade. It is a moderate water need level for this plant. Is going to be about 11 inches tall with the flower and about 25 inches wide. They're going to get huge and beautiful. That's why by putting them in a triangle, eventually in several years, it'll look like one massive plant. So this will be a really fun, beautiful, semi-evergreen for me plant that gives me those beautiful, like really rich purpley blue flowers with that little bit of pink in their aged. So Trevi fountain, deer rabbit resistant because it is hairy. Notice I said resistant, not proof. So there you go. Let's add these in and then we'll move on to somebody else. All right, my great sweet friends. So we've got Trevi fountain in the ground. As a side note, besides Trevi fountain, we also have other pulmonaria in here, specifically raspberry splash, which is one of the more sun tolerant pulmonarias. So if pulmonaria works for you, but you're like, well, I have a little bit more sun, try raspberry splash. I have it over at the house. Gorgeous. Guess what color the flowers are? That's right, my friends, raspberry pink. Now, we've got 2 more perennials to add. And y'all, I will tell you what, this Jacob's Ladder, this Hurricane Ridge, I was so impressed with this. This is why it is a Creekside Champions plant, because it is tough as nails. It is hardy in zones 3 to 9. That is one of the more heat tolerant Jacob's Ladder Pulmonium, I believe is Pulmonium would be its scientific name. But it gives you that fern-like foliage without being a fern. As I mentioned earlier, I have one of these in a container at the chicken coop, and it has grown by leaps and bounds. I only water it probably about once a week, my friends, and it is huge and it is beautiful. Now, because it is hardy in zones 3 to 9, it is considered a sun to shade garden. And guess what? If you're in the cooler zones, I would say zones 3 to 6, you can put it in that full sun. If you're in zones 7, 8, 9, it's going to need a break from the hot afternoon sun. Moderate, drinker with water, as all of these are, and it will be about 9 inches tall, 18 inches wide, and then of course do these beautiful blue flowers on them. I have got 5 dotted throughout here because they are shorter. I'm pulling them more towards the edge, the front edge of the borders. Very, very vigorous root system. I am not playing about this plant, y'all. Trying to get it out. You got to remember, when you're buying a perennial, ultimately you're buying the root system. Take a look at the root system on this thing. Now, very, very vigorous. So when I get in there, I am going to want to pull this. So my new garden friends, do not be afraid to pull open those roots, okay? Even if you just take that whole section off, it is fine. You can also take, if you have a hoary, a razor blade, go in there and break it up. The reason that we do this is because we want the roots to go out and not to continue to circle around the plant, okay? This is why for those first 2 to 3 weeks after you plant new plants, you're going to want to maintain the water on them. You're going to keep an eye on them because these roots are going to start to go out. They're going to get established into their surrounding areas, and then they're going to get all of those water and nutrients that are available in the garden. So that's why we got to make sure that the roots are going out and not continuing to go around. Does this freak me out as a gardener who's been doing this for a very long time and has planted tens of thousands of plants? Absolutely not. In fact, it encourages me because I know it's a very, very strong plant. So Hurricane Ridge, got 5 of those going in the ground. Next, a Brunnera, because every shade garden needs to have a Brunnera. Let me introduce you to Alexandria Brunnera. Now, you are probably familiar with Alexander's Great, which is a gorgeous, massive Brunnera, very, very popular. Well, Alexandria is very refined. She has almost complete solid silver foliage, very, very sophisticated. It is a more compact Brunnera than Alexander's Great. So this is going to bring a little bit of class and elevation to the garden. And because it has that silvery foliage, it is going to act as a reflector in the garden, a bright spot. So we're going to pair this and put it in those areas that maybe are a little bit darker. We're going to have one that is right behind me that is near some near black Heuchera. So we want to put this where it is going to complement and stand out and be a really beautiful shade of brightness in the garden. Handles heat and humidity really well, and it's gonna be about 30 inches wide, about 11 inches tall, and of course, like all Brunnera, it will do beautiful true blue flowers in early spring. So we have got 3 of these in the garden, and they're going to go more through the center of the garden in a rough line. Not really a line, but when your eye sees it, when they're nice and big, it will make sense that they are down the center of the bed. So we've got 3 of these, 5 of the Hurricane Ridge, get them in the ground just like we did with the Trevi fountain, and then we're going to move on to planting a strawberry planter with mini hostas, because every garden needs a little bit of whimsy. Don't you agree? All right, my friends, so we may be wearing linen, we may be in the shade, but dear heavens, we are still glistening today. The heat has hit in North Carolina this week. Shoo-wee! That's all right, because it's still cooler here than I would be out in the full sun. I got all of the perennials planted, and I'm getting ready to go ahead and have some fun whimsy with that strawberry planter. But before we do that, let me show you where all of those perennials got added to. Because this is still retail space, we do have pieces of unique stone that are for sale kind of tucked around this garden, and that's okay. So here on one of the far corners is where I put that Trevi fountain, right? So all three of those put together, when they get nice and mature, they're going to look like one giant Pulmonaria. It is going to be stunning. Then, because the Hurricane Ridge is nice and short, I have 5 of those dotted throughout. Thinking of that fern-like foliage, I wanted to go ahead and add it to the edge, and thinking about where there's not a fern. Now you may say, well, Jenny, there's an autumn fern right there. Yes, but it's not planted. It's actually in a pot. And I'm not sure why the pot's just sitting there in the ground. I guess Mimi has a plan. I don't know. So I'm just going to leave that alone. And then as we work our way around, just kind of spreading those out between the different hostas, right? So here we have that Hurricane Ridge between Voices in the Wind that is on the left and Tears in Heaven that is on the right. So we've got it there. And then that's where our strawberry planter is. And then coming on around throughout here, we have Echo the Sun, which is a bright chartreuse hosta. And then on the other side, we have the Everillo Carex. And so I put that Hurricane Ridge right there at the base because that nice green feathery foliage will look really pretty right there. And then the 3 Brunnera, the Alexandrias. So you can see that there is one right here between the large hostas. Then there is the one behind the black pearl Heuchera that's kind of shiny right now. And then, of course, that third one you saw me plant is to the far right. And then we've got one more Hurricane Ridge between some hostas here in the front. Now, because this is a display garden, we like to make sure that people, if they see a plant and they like it, that they know what the plant is. Because there's nothing more frustrating than seeing a plant and not being able to identify it and ask somebody, hey, do you have Hurricane Ridge? So these are the little labels that I use. They have, of course, their copper little plate, the garden marker, which is that UV protectant, and then the little stakes. We have them in 2 different sizes. This is the shorter one, and then you just, thread it through, and so then the stake stays like that, and then there you go. So everybody is labeled so that our customers can see what the plants are. Now, with the strawberry planter, because containers in the landscape are fantastic. Mimi has already done some. We've got some Carexes in one. We've got some Sun Patients in some. And then we have Hostas in one, a Hosta in one. So with the strawberry planter, you have seen me do this up at the chicken coop. So we're going to repeat it. This is a Michael Carr strawberry planter, nice and big. So we're going to use 2 different mini hostas. One is a blue one. This is blue mouse ears, cutie patootie. And then we have mini skirt, which is a variegated one. These are miniature hostas. They are going to stay small. And then in the center at the top, we're going to put Georgia Peach. That's right. We're going to put a beautiful Heuchera here in the top of that planter. So I've got all my supplies. I've got my compost. I've got my potting soil. I've got my biotone. So we're just going to have some fun creating a fun, whimsical container for this dry shade garden. you how much I love this container. It is such a cutie. I also cannot tell you how important it is if you have a planter on a flat surface. You need to put something between your pot and that flat surface. I just grabbed a couple of stones because Mimi threw down a challenge without even recognizing it. And yeah, there was a little situation that happened. Let me just explain that to you in just a second. But look how cute that is with that Georgia peach Heuchera in there. You've got the two different mini hostas alternating back and forth. Just so stinking cute. Mimi did come to see me while I was in the middle of watering the perennials that I put in the ground, and I was explaining to her what I was going to do to the container, and then I was going to plant the Heuchera directly in the pot. And she was like, I don't know, I wouldn't do that. She said when I did it, she said my soil kept sinking and I've had to go back in and shore it up over and over again. And she said, but you do what you want. I just think that could be a problem because the soil is going to constantly sink. So I said to myself, that sounds like a challenge, and I do love a good garden challenge. So what I did, as you saw, is I put a nice thick layer of that Ultra Outdoor Planting Mix, which is like a compost, in the bottom, and I watered it really, really well. That's when I knew I had a problem because the water was not draining. Obviously, there's a hole in the container. And so once I got some separation between the bottom of the container and the top of, it's on like a little log, then the water immediately drained. And I was like, it's a good thing I did that, because otherwise I would not have known that it was not draining and I would have filled up that whole container with water. So I grabbed some stones and just stuck it between the bottom of the planter and the chunk of wood that it's sitting on. And then as you saw, it is draining beautifully. So as I added layers of soil, then I just went straight to potting soil, right? I kept watering it so it would compact and push down. Put the biotone in there, put the hostas in there, watered it, soil settled again, filled it up with soil, watered it, it went down again. So I kept doing that, making sure that the soil was nice and had no air pockets in there. So that way, when I planted the Heuchera, it's not going to sink. And if it does sink, it'll be a very minimal amount. So like I said, Mimi didn't even know that she challenged me, but she did. And I'm glad she did, because it worked out, because otherwise my little hosta container would be filled with water right now. But this whole space looks amazing. I love it. It's just such a peaceful, restful spot. All of the different colors and textures, the aspidistra when it blows in the wind, it is just so neat. And you can have a beautiful garden in the shade with no irrigation. Remember, no irrigation doesn't mean we don't have to think about the water and making sure that the plants have water. But I love having that Georgia peach Heuchera, because it brings a completely different color that I do not have in the garden. It's that peachy, orange, reddish color that just blends and just brings such a nice pop of color to it. Now, the strawberry planter is frost-proof, so I can leave it out all winter long. These are all perennials. They can stay right here. Next year, they're just going to come back bigger and prettier than ever. So I do not have to worry about it. Obviously, it is really well watered, so we're not going to have to worry about water for at least another couple of days on this strawberry planter. But having fun in the shade garden, even on a hot, sticky day in the south, just lovely. As I glisten here, as always, we hope you have found it fun, informative. Jerry just pulled up, so he's probably coming to check on me because it is late in the afternoon. But just adding layer by layer to the garden, that is what is the joy and the fun of gardening. Of course, gardens are never done. We're constantly adding, tweaking, and editing them. Hope you have an amazing day. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.